Factorials. How to simplify. What are they? Factorial is a process of multiplying all whole numbers down to 1. Why? Helps in the concepts of combinations and permutations. Interesting fact. The European rabbit lives underground in burrows. A group of burrows is known as a warren. Now, let's take a look at the definitions that we have for factorials. The first definition that we're going to look at is n factorial is equal to n times the quantity of n minus 1 times the quantity of n minus 2 times times 2 times 1. And that is the definition we used at the beginning of the video. And now let's take a look at the second definition that we have for factorials, which is n factorial is equal to n times the quantity of n minus 1 factorial. This is helpful so we don't have to write out each number down to 1. We can stop at a useful number. Now that we have seen both definitions, let's take a look at the examples we're going to discuss in today's video. Let's take a closer look at example 1. Let's read the steps. Step 1, rewrite factorial until 1. Step 2, simplify. Step 3, follow order of operations. Now, let's read the question. Simplify the factorial expression 4 factorial. Let's rewrite 4 factorial so we can show our work. Let's use definition 1. So 4 factorial is equal to 4 times 3 times 2 times 1. And 4 times 3 times 2 times 1 is 24. And that is the answer for example 1. Now, let's move on to example 2. Our steps have changed. Let's read them. Step 1, check the numerator and denominator. Step 2, rewrite the bigger one. Step 3, simplify. Step 4, follow order of operations. Now, let's read the question. Simplify the factorial expression 7 factorial over 5 factorial. Let's write down 7 factorial over 5 factorial so we can show our work. We're going to use definition 1 to write out each number down to 1. So 7 factorial is 7 times 6 times 5 times 4 times 3 times 2 times 1. And we have 5 times 4 times 3 times 2 times 1 for 5 factorial. Now we can cancel any numbers that are in the numerator and denominator. So the 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1 cancel out, and we're left with 7 times 6 in the numerator, which is 42. Now, let's use definition 2 to simplify 7 factorial over 5 factorial. So 7 factorial is 7 times 6 times 5 factorial. Why did we stop there? Well, the denominator has 5 factorial. So now we can cancel out the 5 factorial in the numerator and the denominator, instead of writing out whole numbers down to 1. We are left with 7 times 6, which is 42. Two definitions both have the same answer. That is example 2. Now, let's move on to example 3. Let's read the question. Simplify the factorial expression 4 factorial times 9 factorial over 5 factorial times 7 factorial. Let's rewrite the factorial expression so we can show our work. We're going to use definition 1 and write out each number being multiplied, so we have 4 times 3 times 2 times 1 for 4 factorial, and we have 9 times 8 times 7 times 6 times 5 times 4 times 3 times 2 times 1 for 9 factorial, and we have 5 times 4 times 3 times 2 times 1 for 5 factorial, and we have 7 times 6 times 5 times 4 times 3 times 2 times 1 for 7 factorial. And that is using definition 1 to simplify that expression. Now, let's cancel out some whole numbers. So we can cancel out 4, 3, 2, and 1 in the numerator and the denominator. We can also cancel the 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1 in the numerator and the denominator. So we're just left with 9 times 8 in the numerator and 5 in the denominator, which is 72 over 5. Now, let's rewrite the factorial expression so we can use definition 2. Let's simplify. So now we have 4 factorial times 9 times 8 times 7 factorial over 5 times 4 factorial times 7 factorial. Using definition 2, we rewrote 5 factorial as 5 times 4 factorial because 5 minus 1 is 4. But why did we stop at 4 factorial? Because there's a 4 factorial in the numerator. Next, we rewrote 9 factorial as 9 times 8 times 7 factorial because 9 minus 1 is 8 and 8 minus 1 is 7. But why did we stop at 7 factorial? Because there's a 7 factorial in the denominator. So now we can cancel out the 4 factorials and the 7 factorials in the numerator and the denominator instead of writing whole numbers down to 1. We are left with 9 times 8 in the numerator and 5 in the denominator, which is 72 over 5. Two definitions, both have the same answer. That is example 3. Now, let's move on to example 4. Let's read the question. Simplify the factorial expression, the quantity of n plus 2 factorial over n factorial. Let's rewrite the factorial expression so we can show our work. We need to use definition 2 to break down the quantity of n plus 2 factorial until we have n factorial in the numerator. So let's subtract 1 from n plus 2, which is n plus 1. So now we have the quantity of n plus 2 times the quantity of n plus 1 factorial over n factorial. We still don't have n factorial in the numerator. Let's use the definition once more and subtract 1 from n plus 1, which is n. So now we have the quantity of n plus 2 times the quantity of n plus 1 times n factorial over n factorial. Since we have an n factorial in the numerator and the denominator, we can cancel out those terms. So we're left with the quantity of n plus 2 factorial times the quantity of n plus 1 factorial. And that is the answer for example 4. Now let's move on to example 5. Let's read the question. Simplify the factorial expression, the quantity of 4n plus 2 factorial over the quantity of 4n minus 1 factorial. Let's write down the factorial expression so we can show our work. We need to use definition 2 to break down the quantity of 4n plus 2 factorial until we have the quantity of 4n minus 1 factorial in the numerator. How many times do you think we're going to have to subtract from the quantity of 4n plus 2 factorial until we get the quantity of 4n minus 1 factorial? Let's find out. So let's subtract 1 from 4n plus 2, which is 4n plus 1. We still don't have the quantity of 4n minus 1 factorial in the numerator. So let's use the definition once more and subtract 1 from 4n plus 1, which is 4n. We still don't have the quantity of 4n minus 1 factorial in the numerator. So let's use the definition once more and subtract 1 from 4n, which is 4n minus 1. We finally have the quantity of 4n minus 1 factorial in the numerator. Since we have the quantity of 4n minus 1 factorial in the numerator and denominator, we can cancel out those terms. So now we have the quantity of 4n plus 2 times the quantity of 4n plus 1 times the quantity of 4n. And that is the answer for example 5. Now it is your turn. So go ahead and pause the video here so you can take your time and answer this question, and I will show you the result in 3, 2, and 1. Did you get it correct? Fabulous. If not, there's always tomorrow.